Brook has to fight Spence. He can't ask for an exception or a unification. Once we call for the purse bid, then he can't do anything else. He can give up the title, but he can't ask for an exception to fight anybody other than Spence. If Brook, for whatever reason, decided to vacate the title, Spence would fight the next available highest contender. Horn is not available as far as we know. That fight with Pacquiao is pretty much a done deal. Those are the words of Lindsey Tucker, who is the championship chairman for the IBF. Now, as far as I'm aware, Kell Brook, or at least his promoter Eddie Hearn, has requested an extension, another extension, for his mandatory against Errol Spence, for Brook's mandatory against Spence. Now, the first extension was granted because Brook suffered a fractured eye socket against Gennady Golovkin, and because of injury, he was granted extra time to face Errol Spence, because obviously that injury needs a period of healing. So whether Brook wanted to fight Spence earlier than that or not, hypothetically, he wouldn't be able to because his eye socket was still injured. So the IBF obviously and reasonably had to take that into consideration and offer him this extension. But this latest extension, I don't understand why the IBF have granted it, because I believe they have. I think it's an extra 1 week. Why have they granted this extension? On what grounds? His eye should be well healed by now. I believe Eddie Hearn wants to try and sort a deal out for Brook versus Spence and avoid purse bids, but he's had plenty of time to do that. He says that he's made, various offers to Spence, but he didn't hear anything back, and he believes Spence wants to go to purse bids. Well, so be it. If the other team want to go to bids, that's just what it is. I don't see why the IBF should intervene and give Kell Brook another extension. And he's already had long enough. So, I don't know. I hope this situation is sorted out sooner rather than later. It should be sorted out within the next week. Eddie Hearn says there's like a 70 or 80% chance that this Kell Brook Errol Spence fight is going to happen. If it don't happen, then you'll see Kell Brook vacate or get stripped, and Errol Spence will fight the next available highest ranked contender, who I believe is actually Andre Berto, because Jeff Horn was fairly high, but it's looking like he's going to fight Pacquiao. The next guy would be Berto. Errol Spence versus Berto. That's not a fight that really appeals to me. I think Berto will get smashed to pieces. Brook versus Spence is far more competitive, far more interesting in my view. And I'm sure most of you would agree with that. I am one of those people, like Richard Dwyer and like several other people in the YouTube boxing community, who believes that Errol Spence is going to beat Kell Brook. I don't think that it's going to be one-sided by any means. I think it's going to be a highly competitive fight, a fight which Kell Brook could win. To me, that's very conceivable, seeing Kell Brook win. But I'm certainly leaning towards Errol Spence. I feel like he's on the ascendancy. He has momentum behind him. And in boxing, timing is everything. Kell Brook is coming back from being beaten up, having a fractured eye socket, suffering his first loss in his career, going up against a guy who is going to be applying a similar amount of pressure to him that Golovkin applied. He's going to be trying to hit him on that eye as soon as he can. And as strong a puncher as Golovkin is, I believe that Errol Spence is a more prolific body puncher than Gennady Golovkin. I believe that Errol Spence is actually more effective on the inside than Golovkin is. I'm not saying he can punch like Golovkin. I'm not saying that he has the kind of ability to land power shots to the head as consistently as Golovkin is able to do. I'm not saying he has Golovkin's level in terms of that, but in terms of actually being on the inside, where it's rough and tough and dirty, getting little short punches off, getting body shots off, so on and so forth. I believe Errol Spence is actually more advanced than Gennady Golovkin in that particular, in that particular arena. And from a stylistic point of view, I think that's just the worst thing that Kell Brook could come up against right now. A more technical fight, I think, would be better for Kell Brook, particularly coming off his first loss, this eye injury, this layoff, so on and so forth. Going in there with a guy who's going to put pressure on him, hit him in the body, a guy who's extremely hungry, a guy who's very talented, a guy who hits hard himself. I don't think Kell Brook needs this at this point in his career, and I think he knows it, and I think his promoter, Eddie Hearn, above everybody else, knows it. I've gone through this before, and I'll go through it more in depth if this fight actually gets signed, but both fighters have got strengths and weaknesses. Kell Brook, in my view, throws the better straight punches. Kell Brook, in my view, is the more accurate head puncher out of the two of them. I don't know if he has a better jab than Errol Spence, but he certainly has a more consistent jab than Errol Spence. He might have a better jab. I'm not saying he don't, but I'm not here to debate that. What I'm saying is he uses his jab far more consistently than Spence uses his. I mean, there are many Errol Spence fights where you hardly see him throwing any jabs at all. He just goes straight in with hooks and uppercuts. Dispenses with a jab altogether. So, yeah, Brook, definitely a more consistent jab. In my view, more prolific at long range, the more accurate puncher. Maybe even the bigger puncher, I don't know. Both guys, I'm sure, have got the power to hurt each other. But Errol Spence, much better body puncher, much better on the inside. In my view, more versatile. He may not be as good as Brook on the outside, but he can fight on the outside, Errol Spence. He can jab, he can move, he can use his legs when he needs to. He can do that. Whereas Brook is only effective on the outside. On the inside, he really can't do anything at all. He's not even competent on the inside. All he can do is really hold, throw a few coffin shots, that's it. He can't do anything on the inside. Errol Spence is pretty good on the outside and very good on the inside, and also good at mid-range. So that's why I say I think Spence is the more versatile fighter. One of the weaknesses that Spence does have, though, is being that he's so aggressive, being that he is so in love with throwing hooks and uppercuts, and that he's a southpaw, he does square his shoulders up quite a lot. And that will obviously leave him vulnerable to those chocolate brownies, as Kell Brook likes to call them, those straight right hands down the pipe. And Kell Brook's right hand is often very straight. And that's a shot he'd be looking for against Errol Spence. So Spence has to be wary of that. It's a great fight. Again, you get these people who jump up and down hysterically whenever you say that you think Errol Spence is going to beat Kell Brook. And they act as though you're saying that it's a mismatch. I'm not saying it's a mismatch at all. I'm saying it's a great fight. If it was a mismatch, I probably wouldn't be so eager to see it. I'm so eager to see this fight because it's not a mismatch, because it is highly competitive, because either guy could win it. But I just feel that Spence has the edge, and I think he's going to win. Maybe you disagree, maybe you agree, but hopefully you see my logic here. Drop your comments in the comment section below. We will discuss this further at a later date. But as for now, the IBF have apparently granted Eddie Hearn this extension for the negotiations with Errol Spence's team to put this Kell Brook Spence IBF mandatory together. So we'll see, man. I'll keep you guys updated, and hopefully you keep me updated too if you come across any breaking developments before I do. So let me know what you think about everything I talked about in this video. It's happening. I'm out.